This is the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and hitting subscribe on your friend's phone without them knowing. Coming to you from the kitchen studios in downtown Raleigh. This episode is sponsored in part by Spot On, tech that helps your business grow. Request a demo at spoton.com. And GigPro. Change the way you find staff with GigPro. And Joe Van Gogh Coffee, serving the community from seed to cup. And now, dodging sidework once again, it's Max Trujillo and Matthew Weiss.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today, we have the pleasure of the man who has brought delicious sandwiches to Raleigh, Mr. Matt Fern of ISH Delicatessen. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. It's great to, that was a very mild introduction for a guy that has such a storied and big past, man. I was expecting so much more.
I know there was so much to capture, and I figured, you know what, we'll just go the simple route and get into it and save it for the conversation.
I'm a simple person.
We'll unwrap this blanket right now. So, Mr. Fern, or just Fern, most people just yell at you by your last name because it's kind of like a cool last name.
Yeah.
Hey, Fern.
Generally, most people just yell at me, which is great. But, most people don't know I have a first name.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like a name that many people have.
Well,
Matt.
Especially for our purposes here, we'll just call you Fern.
That sounds great.
As to differentiate.
I'll answer.
So let's jump in the current status of things. ISH Delicatessen is finally open on Person Street, 702 Person Street.
Boy, is it.
In the old pharmacy cafe place.
Yeah.
Just to get people's mouth watering. What are you doing there?
Well,
make us hungry.
I figured I'd do the most divisive thing in the world and put delicatessen in the name because everyone either knows what it is or they think they know what it is. And the great part about all of that is that no one really knows what it is. And that's why I figured just stacking parenthetical-ish above delicatessen itself, it gave me the idea that I knew what I was getting into. I don't think everyone else understands that quite yet. So
gives
also,
you your out, sort of like.
What's your restaurant? Like you could have just said, we're doing deli-ish.
Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, did you ever think about delish? Like, well, yeah, you know what, I did. But this is what I came up with. And basically what ish is basically, I think that if you poll 50 people and ask them what a deli or a delicatessen is, you'll get 70 different answers.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, like, some people, it's Katz's Only or Carnegie or Cantor's or Atman's. List goes on forever and ever and ever. Some people, it's Jason's Deli, and some people, it's the Harris Teeter Delicatessen Counter or
Bless
whatever.
Their hearts.
And you know what? And the great part about it is no one is wrong about this, right? Like, and so my version of it is kind of this amalgam of sort of three things that I'm not, which is Jewish, Italian, and from the South. And so
I thought you were at least one of those.
I mean, I think if I did a genetic test, I'll bet I'm some part Italian, but that's about it. And also, like, ish kind of, we can hide behind it and do whatever we want with it, right? So we have a basically a play on the sushi California roll on here because why not? Because we can, right?
Yeah.
We also have a corned beef Reuben, pastrami Reuben that we make both in house. And then basically ish is just kind of this weird smash up of things that we can just get, a little stony and get goofy with and make sandwiches that we just whatever we feel like doing, right?
Yeah.
So my favorite, the first sandwich that ever came to fruition in this place was what we just call the smoked fish melt. And so it takes this like classic Jewy delicatessen thing of smoked whitefish salad. We grab fish from local seafood off the coast. Generally, we're doing bluefish. Sometimes it goes out of season, and we get to do jumping mullet. But basically, we create this sandwich out of this classic delicatessen thing, and then turn it into one of my guilty food pleasures, which is a tuna melt.
Yeah.
Or basically, like fish and cheese shouldn't go together.
Yeah.
It
No,
shouldn't.
yeah, that's
Why?
a-
But somehow this works.
It kind of
So-
works in that regard.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But only in that regard. Like, you don't want salmon and Havarti or
I don't
something
know.
like that.
Blue cheese and ahi tuna sometimes works.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But rare. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So what's the rest of the sandwich? You got
Oh, there's some braised Swiss chard on there that we just cook with a little bit of onion and some deglaze with white wine, with some chili flake in there to give it a little spice. And then mayonnaise that's made with, and don't tell anyone, but it's got Hellmann's in it.
But that's not a secret. You proudly display both in your deli counter.
And Kewpie, because
Yeah.
Kewpie is a
Kewpie's
necessity.
the shit.
Absolute necessity.
Yes.
I got into an argument with some guy one night about like the Dukes or Die situation, and he's like, if you have anything other than Dukes, you don't know shit about mayonnaise. I was like, what? I was like, first of all, Kewpie, and he was like, what do you mean?
Right.
Like, well, you don't have a leg to stand on right
you
now,
don't
then
know
do you,
Kewpie.
sir?
Yeah.
Well, that's like the people that they tell you about. Oh, this movie has to win Best
Yeah,
Oscar
yeah,
of the
yeah,
year. And you're like,
yeah.
that's the only movie that you've seen that's nominated. So how would you know that?
Yeah.
Is Kewpie Japanese?
Japanese.
It is Japanese, right? And it's
Yeah.
like basically, I think what it's made with egg yolks.
More egg yolks than
it's-
most other mayonnaises.
Yeah, higher concentration of egg yolk in
Yeah.
its mix. Yeah, it's delicious. Chef Bobby McFarland and I share a big love for that. And then, yes, people get into all these arguments about whatever. And Hellmann's on the West Coast is best foods. That's what it's the same thing. It's,
Truth. Yep.
It's Carl's Jr. and Hardee's.
Hardee's, yep.
It's the same thing. And it's like, yeah, we grew up with it. We just also didn't have Dukes on the West Coast.
Sure.
So we didn't really have an argument.
But we didn't really have Dukes. Dukes is so regionalized. We didn't even have Dukes up north. Like I don't remember
Hellmann's,
ever
right?
seeing
Oh, yeah.
Dukes growing up north. Yeah, it was Hellmann's. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And my
But,
parents, God bless their heart, love Miracle Whip.
Oh, Miracle.
Yeah, we have Miracle Whip.
God.
What is that?
That's what I grew up eating.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, I don't even know what do they put in Miracle Whip on top of just being like a mayo base. Isn't there like a salad dressing or something that
Oh, I think it's just canola oil and sugar. Like,
so there's no eggs in it.
I can't imagine there's anything real food.
You
in
just
that thing
whip
at
it
all.
like a meringue kind of thing?
No.
Yeah.
I think if there's some kind of like magic, like there's
Miracle.
a witch's brew. Yeah.
Yeah.
if only we could tell. Oh, here it is. Ingredients: water, soybean oil, high fructose corn syrup, vinegar, modified cornstarch, eggs, salt, natural flavor, mustard, flour, potassium sorbate as a preservative, paprika, wherever you're from, spice, and dried garlic. It almost kind of sounds delicious.
Yeah. Except for the fact that once you eat it, you're like, what the hell is this? Also, apparently, first ingredient's water. You can hydrate yourself with it. Exactly. Tall glass of Miracle Whip. That sounds great.
Yeah, we should do like a blind mayo taste test and see if
Like the
anyone
same-
knows the difference.
Well, even better, the same sandwich made exactly the same way.
Yeah.
The only difference is the
Hellmann's
mayonnaise.
or Dukes.
Yeah.
And no one's going to catch that.
And so in the beginning, my graphic designer and I came up with this idea of having this like this drawing of like this battle of the mayonnaises, and basically it was a bottle of Dukes and a bottle of Hellmann's, and the referee was this thing that we created, which is called Matzo Boy, which is a sandwich that hasn't really come to fruition yet, but. Basically, it's me. We were going to write this whole comic thing that it didn't really happen. We're still going to maybe get to it at some point. So basically, Matzo Boy is the referee, and he's raising the hands of both the Hellmann's and the Dukes bottles because they're both winners, and that's what we want. And we want there's certain dishes that Miracle Whip is never going to be right for. Why can't I get Miracle Whip out of my head?
It's gonna
You're
be
talking
in
about
here.
Hellmann's
Yeah.
or Dukes. That's right. We're not cutting any of this. This is the best part.
Yeah.
We will.
Because you know why, Matt? It is such, they are so mashed up in your head because there's just purposes for both of them. So it's like you can't eliminate one.
Like McCormick's with paprika and lime. Like, what a great mayonnaise for certain applications.
Right.
But like people glaze over this, and
I used
Yeah.
to drive by the Schillings season house every time I'd come up from Southern California back to see my mom in Northern California, because Schillings, like the big spice company,
Yeah.
is just right off the road, like in kind of outside of Gilroy, like garlic capital of the world.
Oh, right.
And there's just a bunch of cool things happen there. But when you start driving in, if your windows are down, you're just like, oh, there's a lot of sodium in the air. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they're just, it's all season and spice as you drive through. It's very nice.
All right.
Anyhow,
I grew
let's-
up next to a cabbage factory.
Ooh.
Like, made sauerkraut.
Oh, that could not have smelled good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't even have sauerkraut in the deli right now. I know that's probably blasphemous too.
How could you be a deli without sauerkraut?
I know, right?
So the tuna fish melt, and
Yeah.
I've had it. People go bonkers over it,
love it.
and it makes so much. I mean, now that you're saying this, I remember my dad every day for lunch would get from the corner deli tuna melt sandwich. Like that was his thing. But I thought the first iteration or first like amazing thought that popped in your head was a pastrami with your recipe for a pastrami.
The pastrami recipe probably took the longest to get to where it is right now. The fish melt was the first thing that I made, wrote down all of the things for, and then it as a recipe became something that didn't change.
Okay.
The pastrami was one thing that like one of the first times that I did a recipe for it. Like I ate it, I cooked up this big brisket, smoked it, steamed it, took a bite of it, and threw it away. It was just terrible. It just was not anything I wanted to eat. Just like I wouldn't even like give it to friends because I like a couple of them. But yeah, no. So that fish melt was the first one that hasn't wavered since I left Ashley's company in 2016. I think that was July, and like by October I had that recipe like there in the book, ready to roll.
Nice.
Well,
All right.
that's a good spot right there because 2016 is when you left Ashley's company, and we're talking about Ashley Christensen, of course, and we'll get into that for a moment. But it's 2022, just so you're aware. Like, this isn't pre-taped from 5 years ago. It's taken you since 2016 till now to open up ISH.
Yeah.
And I remember when you had originally left Ashley's company that was the plan. It was like, oh, Matt Fern's leaving, but he's leaving to do this.
Yeah.
And everyone was behind it. It wasn't like controversial. It was like, no, he's ready to take the next step.
Oh,
Bad breakup. Fern and Ashley are
right? Yeah.
separating ways.
Yeah, exactly. And so we were excited, and we're like, when's Ish coming? Where is Ish coming? Ish has gone from one location to potentially another location to maybe another one. Did it happen maybe 4 times? I think something like that.
Yeah, we designed 4 buildings. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe care to just walk us through a little bit of
Yeah.
that wild process?
Yeah. So when it was time to leave, when this idea came to my brain and it was time to leave that company that we had just an amazing time in, I got in and started designing this building on the southwest side of town, actually where Sam Jones Barbecue is right now. Building was huge. My investors were a little bit leery that it was a little too big, and I didn't know what I was doing. And it turns out they were right about both of those things. And then so that kind of fell through, and I went into this like kind of dark spot for a minute, thinking it was my fault. I'm sure some of it was, but some of it was also that the building was too big and for what I needed to do. And so I took a reset, went and worked at Garland for a little bit with Paul and Chidi. And then I got in with this company that opened up Longleaf Hotel.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to be in that building. It used to be like a Quiznos, then it was NC Deli, which just seems like a perfect fit, right? Because no, I'm joking about that. But so it was this tiny old Your House building that apparently was a complete piece of shit that just couldn't like hold any weight on the top. So we couldn't put like HVAC or a hood. So we had to tear it down. At this point, we were getting ready to open up the hotel. In fact, I think we tore the building down like 3 days before the hotel opened in January of 2020. So that's a fun one.
Yeah.
Right? So cruising along, and I start to get in with my team and my graphic designer. We start thinking about, like T-shirts to make. So I make an ISH Delicatessen T-shirt. There was an interactive shirt that I still wear. I have a lot of them. But it says ISH Delicatessen, appetizing since 20 blank. And it's got a fill-in little thing because the joke is this thing's never going to open, right? Like we're just going to keep wearing this shirt. People are like, what the hell is this? So it turns out that we get into this building or we tear down this building. We do a structure that is 2-story because current UDO states inside of the Christmas plan that to promote density, you have to go 2 stories or more. So we do that. We design it. We did a pricing structure on it. We found out 2 things about it. It was too expensive for what we wanted to build. And programmatically, we didn't know what we wanted to do on the second floor.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of parking over there. Couldn't really do like an event space. We were thinking about everything from like putting a workout room in there for the hotel guests to all these other things that we just decided that it wasn't the right thing. So we had to go for a design variance in the city to see if the city would allow us to build a one-story building. Our first meeting with the city was March the 11th, 2020.
Yeah, and I think a couple days later we hit lockdown.
That was the first day that they stopped taking in-person meetings. It was when they were supposed to go virtual, right? We were the first meeting on the plan for the day.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So April 11th comes by, where they're not ready for virtual meetings. May 11th, it happens. We pass. They allow us to build a smaller building. And then I look at that team and I was like, guys, what's it going to take to build this building? Like, I know the answer is kind of crazy right now. And basically there wasn't an answer. Another month or so goes by and I checked back in. They're like, well, the hotel would have to do well for a year. I was like, well, shit, I can't wait around for that. Right. And they looked at me and they were like, no, of course, we understand that. In fact, one of my old business partners in that building is friends with the guy that owns Person Street Pharmacy, and knew that. And at that point, he was a partner also in the cafe, and cafe shut down in March of 2020 and didn't come back. And he was looking for a new tenant. So like, that's kind of how we ended up there, and maybe ended up opening up faster by going into that building, doing a small bit of renovation rather than trying to build a one-story building next to that hotel.
So did you then fill in the T-shirt with 2021?
The day we opened, I had the first guest that we saw. Dear friend of mine came in, and he was the first one there. And as I handed him his sandwich, I took a video of him filling in 21 into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I want to hear from is why you decided to leave Ashley Christensen. But first, I imagine that because you have this now restaurant, you need help arranging it. And our friends at Spot On can help you do that. So Spot On is a tech company that is helpful in all things on premise. I know you were talking about it before. You have invoices, you have payroll to do. When I walked in this morning, Max was on the phone with his payroll people because they couldn't figure out some nuances that he had to figure out. Your POS systems, your inventory systems. Guess what? Spot On does all of that, and they make it really easy for you. There's an app on your phone that you can use. Or you can talk to a local person, and that local person is Tanya Manibo. She's at 858-213-7820. That's right. You can just call her directly, 858-213-7820. Or you can shoot her an email, tanyam@spoton.com. That's TANYAM@spoton.com.
And change the way you find staff. I'm talking about GigPro. GigPro has 86 all unnecessary BS to hiring in the hospitality industry. That's right. You can fill shifts in minutes, and you only pay if it works. This is how it works. First, you create an account. It takes less than 5 minutes, and you post a gig in just a few minutes. Then you fill the gaps in your own schedule of your business, Mr. Fern, if you needed it. You fulfill immediate needs. You have fast and effective ways to recruit based on performance. And then you set it out there for people to apply. Professional people in the food and beverage industry apply for these jobs. Select as many as desired candidates as needed. GigPro covers the 1099 paperwork, and every pro is covered with occupational accident insurance, folks. So go to GigPro/NCFB to not only get your first gig, but get your first gig for free. So GigPro.com/NCFB.
Max, I think you need a little pick-me-up.
Seriously,
And to help
yeah.
you out today, we're drinking Joe Van Gogh coffee, but specifically the Katia Duke San Isidro from Honduras.
Yeah, because Katya herself made a conscious effort to impact the lives of women in her community to ensure that their voices are heard and respected. From involving them into every single step of the growing, harvesting, and exportation of the coffee to the impact of educational resources for young girls in the community, Katya recognizes the importance of having diversity of gender and all that comes with it on her farm. Joe Van Gogh has inspired what Katya Duke and the magical women of San Isidro have created by carefully roasting this coffee. You will find exciting flavors of Asian pear, creamy nougat, and floral wildflower honey in each cup. Try a bag yourself. And Mr. Fern, I implore you. Implore is my new word of the day. Try a little coffee. Here we go, everybody.
Go to joevango.com or any of their locations around the Triangle.
Nougaty.
It's delicious. But yeah, let's let's go where you left off, Matt.
Yeah. So, I mean, for those listening outside of the Triangle or outside of North Carolina, Ashley Christensen is the it chef in the area. 2020 Chef of the Year from the James Beard Awards, multi-time nominated. The whole kit and caboodle. I think at that time maybe there were 4 restaurants up and running, and you worked your way up to be the beverage director. Quoted Ashley Christensen said that she met you and knew that she couldn't get it out of her head that she needed you on her team. So then you came aboard, but then cut to you leave that. That seems like for somebody that's into wine, you're a level 2 certified sommelier. Why? Why would you leave that seemingly lofty, cushy position?
I wanted to spend a bunch of money and not make any.
Well, that's the old joke in the wine business, right? Yeah. How do you make a small fortune in the wine business? You start with a large one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What a great question, and one that it seems so far removed. It's tough to answer right now.
Yeah.
But I think in 2016 when I decided to leave, I had this idea where I was like, "What? Raleigh kind of wants this thing, and also Raleigh needs this thing."
Yes.
And so there was a thought of actually, I was having a conversation when I was talking with David Baldwin from Baldwin and right next to Videri Chocolate Marketing Company. He also owns part of Ponysaurus, but good friend, really wicked smart dude. And I took him to lunch to run this name by him. And I started talking about, it's just sort of this Jewish thing. It's sort of this Italian thing. It's blah, blah, blah. I was like, it's also based off of the fact that I think Raleigh wants a deli and Raleigh needs a deli. And so we keep talking and all this stuff. And he kind of stopped me at one point when I was talking about it, trying to explain what the name ISH Delicatessen was going to mean. And he looked at me and he's like, I think you've already said the name. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you've already said the name. He's like, the name is part of the narrative. I was like, I know, David, I'm trying to get to that. Just back off for a second, man. And so he looked at me and he's like, I think you should call it Wants and Needs. And I was like, still to this day, I get, even though, Jenny and Jonathan Bonchak have started that coffee company or the tea company that's Wants and Needs or Needs and Wants, I forget. But this looks like a great product too. And, but I was like, oh man, that is a really great name. And in fact, when it was going to be where Sam Jones was or is now, we were going to make a wine bar and put it upstairs and call it Wants and Needs Wine. That clearly never came to fruition, whatever. So that was really kind of what drove me away from this comfy, cushy, great feeling that, stood on stage with Ashley when she won Best Chef Southeast in 2014, sat in the front row at, during the 2016 awards when Death and Taxes was nominated for Best New Restaurant and Shia ended up winning. We all knew he was going to win, but being a part of all of that and walking through that room and just being around your contemporaries and heroes, it was just one of the most magical things, right? And I wanted to try to find a way where my goal is, I don't have a goal of being nominated or being a part. I mean, if there was anything, it would be outstanding service, but that's so far-fetched from a tiny little place that we're doing right now. I wanted to try to put the things in motion that I had learned in my 9 years with Ashley. So I started with her as a server that picked up shifts. I ended up taking over the wine program because I knew something about wine and wanted to sell better wine at that place. And also kind of felt like Poole's Diner deserved a really, really cool wine list.
Yeah.
And went on to cultivate this thing. And my favorite moment in the beginning of that was she looked at me and said, Fernie, let's start collecting wine. Let's make a cellar. And I was like, oh, hell. And I think Kate Golan ended up, referring to it as, the keys to a new Ferrari or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man. So we amassed all this wine a lot of it is still in the Death and Taxes cellar. That we kind of secretly hid somewhere else. Don't tell the ABC that. But
They're not listening.
oh, good, thank God. So, and it was really neat. I actually just came out of retirement as a sommelier for a moment a couple of nights ago, and worked a Riesling dinner at Death and Taxes, and I actually got to pour some of the wines that I purchased for the company.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Full circle.
really, really rad. It was so amazing just to like sit there and open these wines that I had put in the cellar that I was thinking when I was leaving, I was like, oh no, I bought way too much Riesling. This is going to be a bad idea. And then
So she's like, you need to dance and sell this fucking Riesling 10 years later.
So then Cappy Pete comes along, and so we had 6 wines on the menu a couple weeks ago, and she picked 3 of them, and I bought 3 of them. So it was kind of neat to like go through all of that. It was really fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that that time frame was really like the growth of, I would say, at least in the triangle, kind of like the food and beverage industry, like watching
Oh man.
watching Ashley's rise to where she ultimately, I'd say like, and she still has, her story isn't finished being written, but like there was definitely a pinnacle of like 2018 or it was 2019, I believe, where she was the outstanding chef of the year for the whole country.
Correct.
Watching that was like, wow, we've been a part of doing this coverage of the food and beverage industry of North Carolina since the end of 2016. So we're kind of talking about all that same frame. And it's like, it's just growing and growing and growing. And of course, the beverage program, the beverage director of Ashley's system makes sense to then go on, much like Andrew Ullum, who was doing the beverage or the pastry program, the bread program, went on to create Union Special. It's like, of course, this team is going to grow and expand. And so that's why it made sense. But yeah, I would have probably expected you to open up Wants and Needs Wine Bar and even your own wine distributor or like beverage focused. But then like switch shift and you open up an Jewish-ish, Italian-ish
Weird place.
delicatessen. Now, you may not know this about me, but I grew up in a deli. My godfather, Marco, ran Deli DeMarco in Cupertino, California, just like a stone's throw from where Apple headquarters is.
Sure.
And like I still, when I walk into a walk-in, I get instantly transformed back to like going back to the mayo conversation, those big, 5-gallon tubs of mayo that you'd open up and like just it has its own scent on top of the mayo scent mixed with the refrigeration scent and the mustard and all that. And it just, boom, I'm a 5-year-old kid again. And there's something that like I enjoy just being in walk-ins for some stupid reason. And it feels nice. And
It's also a great place to cry.
yeah, and discipline and hide and cool off in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, was there a connection to your childhood or any sort of thing that made you think like, I get that you thought Raleigh needed a deli, and they do, but why did you feel like you needed to be the ambassador to that?
Just a fat kid that likes sandwiches.
But you didn't have a culinary background. Like you've been in restaurants, but from what I've read about you, you've never cooked in a place.
So when I graduated high school and I started working in a kitchen like the next day.
Okay.
On my way to Johnson & Wales in Providence, Rhode Island, I was going for the hotel restaurant management program, which is now called hospitality management, rightfully so. And then I dropped out of that school and I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this industry. Y'all are fucking crazy, man. and then literally other than 3 years working in wine retail here in Raleigh, that's all I've ever done. And I would work when I first lived here in 94, I would wait tables at Rockola Cafe and then drive straight to the Outback on Creedmoor and make bloomin' onions. And so I was a line cook, and then like I went and worked in a couple other places, and then moved out to like Flagstaff, Arizona, and I cooked out there. And basically, it was just a way to like travel the country, be an idiot, and learn this country, learn how to cook a little bit. And then I said one day I was like, well, the hell with being a cook. This is stupid. I'm gonna go work in the front of the house.
Yeah.
I know how to talk to people. I'm going to go work less and make more money. Great. Good stuff. We're going to go.
Yeah.
Right.
But all the while, I kind of always dabbled in cooking. I've always loved cooking at home. And then, yeah, and being in Ashley's company, I had a chance to like watch amazing people come in and cook and watch, like we talked about Andrew Olam, but you also watch like Sonny Gerhardt, who was also long list for beard.
Just got nominated. Yeah,
Heck
kudos
yeah,
to Sonny.
man.
Yeah,
What a
congrats, Sonny.
yeah.
Talk about a guy that puts in the work.
Whew,
and
does he?
redeveloped. I think Sonny. We're talking about St. Rock, of course. That's just a block away from here. I think now, through all this crazy turmoil, like Sonny, like reinvented St. Rock.
Yeah, man.
It's his now.
Yeah.
Like I think he is an independent owner of that business. Which I kind of want to cut into that because that's something that you said right before we got on the mics that like you're now running a thing that is yours.
Yeah.
And it's a different thing. I'm kind of experiencing that too myself. And I never
Congratulations.
thought, thank you, but I never realized what that meant until you do it. And, it's like helping out people at, like when I was at Wyatt Hill and somebody would come in and they're like, oh, are you the owner here? I'm like, no, but I help
Right.
out a lot, and,
Yeah.
and they're like, whatever.
It's such a great question to be asked, right?
Walk
Like,
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is a different feeling when they're like, oh, are you an owner? I'm like, yeah, sure. Yes.
sure.
And it feels different, to have that type of feeling. So how has that been for you now opening ish and like just having that responsibility, that ownership of the business?
well, now when people ask me if I'm an owner, I say no because I probably owe them some money and I got to
Right.
get out of there.
Exactly.
No, just kidding. It's really amazing, and I never thought that my midlife crisis would manifest itself in a restaurant. I was always thinking like convertible sports car.
Yeah.
But here we are, losing my mind trying to figure this thing out, and I couldn't be happier that I get to do this. And I started a little wall inside of the deli, like above the beer taps, which aren't hooked up yet. 7 months into owning this thing. That's a story that this podcast doesn't have time for. And
Try us.
Yeah, we went 2 hours with Scott Crawford.
Nice.
Second half of the hour will just be how CO2 works.
he's far more interesting than I am. But
We were talking about beer tabs, about being asked about an owner.
oh yeah. So I have this this wall that I've now dedicated to good things people are saying, because there's enough bad things out there, right? Like, and it's easy to focus on a shitty review from somebody that probably had a reason to write it. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. We caught a bunch of shitty reviews, like, I don't know, month 3 or something into this thing, and we paid attention to what ended up being a systematic error that we were doing that we didn't know we were doing wrong, right? So paying attention to those is great, but being just inhibited by them was something that I had to kind of get past. And so I found myself, like, anytime something amazing would happen, we print off a ticket or a text message from a buddy, or we recently did Triangle Food and Wine Experience here in Raleigh, and we had a couple of amazing chefs from other parts of the country, and one of them uttered, this might be the greatest egg sandwich that I've ever had in my life, and I wrote it. In my handwriting, I wrote it on the wall. And just so when things are tough and when times are difficult, you get a chance to look up there and say, holy shit, Chris Shepard ate an egg sandwich here and thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, you got to celebrate the wins.
yeah. And so that's kind of what I've started to do. And that really has kind of changed a little bit of my outlook for, when we look at the bank account and it's not where we want it to be. Those things don't necessarily pay the bills, but they refocus the energy.
Yeah.
And in an industry where we expend a lot of energy doing a lot of fun things, but a lot of difficult things, and probably a lot of things that are bad for us, we have a chance to look up there, and the whole team does this right now.
Yeah.
Like the whole team can look up there and be like, Billy Durney said that this was a sandwich shop for a mad scientist or something like that. It's like, cool, like those are the things that we need to hold on to. And we're just making food, man. We're not curing cancer.
Right.
You know, we're not curing world hunger. We're making people fat and happy for a couple of minutes, and that's it. You know, and
I wanted to back to that thing about sandwiches and what Raleigh needed at that time, because it's funny. You know, that's the year that I moved here, and Max would tell me, you know, the one thing I want to do, I want to open up a deli, a sandwich shop. And, you know, Max was influenced, and he'll tell you, I'm sure he's talked about it on the show, that Bay Cities in Santa Monica, California
It's
is
my
his old time, like,
holy grail.
Yeah. And he was like, I want to bring something like that to Raleigh. Of course. And,
but yeah, good luck to try to recreate that.
yeah.
but it doesn't have to recreate, right? So you've done something of your own. And I think I've eaten almost everything on the menu at this point, because we've been lucky enough to do a couple of wine dinners. But I gotta say, my favorite there is the chicken saltimbocca.
Oh man!
And I will say that, I mean, chicken and cheese is just like my umami. And there's so much. It's like a chicken salad with tons of fontina cheese or ulami cheese. Is it?
It's there's Fontal and Asiago at the moment.
Fontal and Asiago.
Yeah, we did it with Calvander out of the gate, but that was at $23 a pound. It was tough to make a sandwich out of.
But I will say this, that if you are going to eat that sandwich, let that be your day, because I walk in there, I eat that sandwich, and then I am literally not hungry for the rest of the day. So whatever it costs, it's actually worth it, because it's like eating 2.5 meals.
It's so wild. It's like the most boring looking sandwich. It's like this tan chicken salad on tan bread with a little bit of cheese on it. And you look at it and you're like, this can't.
Right.
No.
It's not pretty.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's like eating, it's not pretty at all. But it's delicious.
The reason Bay Cities is what Bay Cities is, and I mean, I diluted down to this one aspect. There's a lot of cool things. This deli in Santa Monica is huge and has a huge market and a great wine program and a line out the door and like snooty kind of like rough sandwich builders that like if you're on your phone they move on, if you question anything they move on. They're kind of sandwich Nazi. A little they're rough. I mean, on a busy Tuesday afternoon, you may wait 45 minutes until they come to you. And so like you're just kind of walking around, which is probably what part of the design, because then you're walking around and going, oh, I like this, I'll buy this. And now you've got a full basket of groceries.
Brilliant.
You walk out of there $120 later, you're like, what just happened? But they make the Godmother, it's delicious. But I don't know if you all know this, but the Garacchiola brothers originally owned it. Bob was I sold wine to him, so I kind of knew his backstory a little bit. But there was the Beacon Bakery back in the day that would sell all of their bread to the movie houses like Paramount and RKO, and like back like in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
Cool.
And their father had owned that bakery. And then as time went on, and as their father was either retiring or had passed, they're like, well, we can't continue the bakery, but we're going to go our separate ways. And then Bob opened up the deli, but took all of the baking recipes and all the big equipment with him to Bay Cities and basically moved Beacon Bakery to Bay Cities. And so I bring all that up because what really makes their sandwiches is the bread. The bread is unparalleled. When I go there, I just buy a few loaves and stuff them into my suitcase and bring them back. And it's incredible. And so you can put anything. You can put boar's head meat on that bread, and it's going to be flawless.
Easy.
Boar's head's fine. It's good.
Yeah, don't get pastrami. It's not pastrami.
Yeah. But that's my point is the bread can be the spackle that, takes up all the holes.
The lipstick on a pig.
Where do we fall in bread, and what is your commitment to your bread program at ISH?
So the first bread that we picked was kind of really amazing. I went and had a conversation with Josh Bellamy at Boulted, and I'd asked him for a meeting, and I was like, why is he going to say yes to this? So we sit down, and he's like, what's going on? I was like, can we talk about Rye Bread? and he was like, oh, hell yeah. And he gets all excited, and he's like, yeah, man, let's talk about Rye Bread. And he's like, so what do you think? And we start talking about like basically bread in general first. And I was like, here's what's hard for me to bring up right now is that like artisanal bread with like like perfectly made bread with wonderful crumb doesn't, to me, make a great sandwich, right? Like, I want mayonnaise on all of it. And I don't want a big hole that mayonnaise can't get into, because that's not. So luckily, rye bread doesn't crumb like that, because it doesn't, I guess it doesn't ferment as much as just like sourdough does. Josh is the bread nerd in this situation, so he told me all about it. I clearly remembered every aspect of it. Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
And so we started talking about what my favorite rye bread was, and my favorite rye bread experience, and I didn't really have one that was like the greatest one to me. Like, I knew what I liked as far as like shape and size, and I brought up Zingerman's Delicatessen in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
And their bread is, it's great. And then Josh brings this first tester over to the house like 2 weeks later. We're talking like middle COVID, like, I don't know, October 20 or something like that, 2020. And he brings it over and leaves it on my porch, knocks and starts walking away, because we're not in the same pod or whatever. And so I walk outside, and I have a loaf of bread that I eat, like immediately, and he sends me a text from his car. He's like, "Let me know what you think." And I was like, "Cool." And I was like, "Here's my thoughts." And he's like, "Hang on." And he sends me back this whole list of things, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." So he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna work on this." Next week, loaves 2 and 3 show up, some tweaks. Week after that, 4 or 5 show up. Round 6.
Can you share
shows up.
what the tweaks are? Like, oh, I want this to be spicier. I want this to be more like, what are some of the feedback you're
a lot
giving
of it
him?
was there was salt content in one of them. The first one was, I guess, too hydrated, and we did talk about a little bit more about getting a little more rye flour in there at one point. And then like round 6 shows up, and I called him immediately after. I was like, "How are you going to make this any better? Like, this is absolutely perfect. What are you going to do for this? Like, how?" And he's like, "Really?" I was like, "No, I think this, I ate it by itself. I toasted it. I had it with butter. I made a grilled cheese. Like, I didn't really have any pastrami or corned beef on me at that moment. And I certainly wasn't going to go get boar's head pastrami, because just a slight dig. It's fine." And that
hurt
is
their sales just now.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It really affected them.
They really, yeah. How are they going to survive? Yeah, and so that was the first bread that we came up with, and one that he still, whenever I talk to him, I'm like, every time I eat one of those sandwiches, which isn't that often anymore, I sent him a note, and I was like, "This is so good." He's like, "Yeah, we're going to keep making changes." I was like, "What are you doing?
Don't make changes.
It's
Just
so
let's keep
good."
it. So is
Yeah, an
Boulted
artist needs to know when to stop.
This is the best. Like,
Yeah.
don't keep pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
What, and then so is Bolted making all the breads?
No.
Okay.
No. We get some stuff from Weaver Street, and currently the bread shop is taking care of brioche rolls for the egg sandwiches in the morning. The bread that the chicken salad is on it comes from the bread shop right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your commitment level to bread is high, it sounds like, and that you're almost pulling out your sommelier tactics back in the day by using multiple distributors and finding the vendors for the right pairing, but you're doing that with the bread.
Yeah. We ran out of rye bread one time, and but we had a bunch of like corned beef and pastrami. And instead of just going and getting an inferior product just to bridge the gap, we took the Reuben off completely while we were out of the rye bread, and came up with a new sandwich that is still on the menu now. That is, it's called the Nassau County, and
I like that.
Yeah.
What's on the Nassau County?
It's corned beef. It had pickled okra because you definitely find that in
Nassau County for sure.
Coleslaw, mustard, and Havarti cheese on wheat bread. And it's now, the okra was bread and butter pickled. We ran through our summer supply of that recently and switched it to yellow squash. Still bread and butter pickled, so it gets that like turmeric-y and sweet aspect to it. It's such a good sandwich too. That kind of came out in a snarky moment where seemingly all of the bad reviews that we were getting were coming from people from Long
Nassau
Island.
County.
Yeah.
Right,
Like, I'm
'cause they-
from Long Island. I know delis. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, fuck, man. Like,
and like the
Signed, M.
benchmark,
Weiss.
benchmark there is Ben's Deli, which is like, you know.
I have a
it's-
T-shirt from Ben's.
Yeah, I bet.
Ashley brought it to me. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And so, kind of in a snarky moment, I did that, and and then
Fuck you, all Nassau Countyers.
Yeah. And like, so we wanted to come up with a T-shirt that was like, I'm from wherever, another fill-in T-shirt, like, I'm from wherever, I know delis, and this is no deli, or something like that. Like,
This is Deli.
yeah.
By the way, I want that to be your secondary logo, like the hand just going
Just
back
like-
and forth, shaking. Like when everybody says "ish," you
This
have to
emoji,
be like,
the shrug
or
emoji.
There's that great review. It's like a meme now, but the guy put on front of his deli on a sandwich board. It said, "Worst sandwich I've ever had,"
Yeah.
in quotes, voted by that guy on Yelp one time.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't even read Yelp, man. I don't even want to.
So I want to understand from the business owner perspective, and when you're owning a business, there's so much to think about. Like we said, I mean, no pun intended, but the payroll, the build out, the logistics of the bread. How do you keep it like moving forward? Because it is a sandwich shop for a mad scientist. Like you got to constantly move and have specials to keep it excited and to keep the people coming back. I'm assuming, right?
We should do more of it than we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, by all means. I sort of recently and kind of throughout the winter, we've kind of just tried to hold steady and get really good at what we're doing and get really consistent with the product that we're producing. We've only added a couple new sandwiches here and there. And I'm excited for spring, man. I'm excited for the warmer weather. I'm excited for different produce, and excited to get into this catalog of sandwiches that I've thought through, maybe not executed. I mean, like the original build out of the POS had like 60 sandwiches in it, just because and they were never going to all be on the menu at the same time, right? I mean, we're not Zingermans.
Yeah.
We don't have the ability to.
You
do
just
that.
want a dossier of things. That you can,
And there's some that are classic and straightforward, and some that are goofy and off the wall, and kind of touching back on like the sort of like the sommelier idea. Whenever I tried to build a wine list, there was always things on there that people knew that didn't need to be explained, that they could come in and feel comfortable about. And then there was some off the wall stuff that you just kind of like you'd get to have fun with, and y'all know, like you get to hand sell and you get to look at somebody and be like, no. You want to try this thing that you can't pronounce, and you take people to a different part of the world wine-wise. And Ish kind of started doing that. Well, I mean, it was always meant to do that. I guess it kind of settled into its spot, but is now going to change a little bit. The new menu comes out, I don't know, in another month or so as we dial some things in. Some of the favorites obviously will stay, but some of the
like what can we expect? What's like noodling in the brain of Fern right now to be like, man, I want a sandwich that tastes like this.
So there's two that were on the original menu that we just found were just incredibly labor intensive, that I think I can find a way to do it again. But the unequivocally the greatest sandwich that's ever been made, and you can fight me on this, is John's roast pork in Philly. Philly is not even the cheesesteak as far as I'm concerned. It's the roast pork sandwich. It's from John's on the South Side, and it is outstanding. And so we can't just recreate something that doesn't make any sense, right? Like the reason we didn't want to be Cats is, well, because it exists, and let's also have a little more fun than that, right? Like, and I mean, there's a little bit of humor involved in all of this stuff, right? And so out of the gate, we made this sandwich that was a kind of a bit of a mashup of a roast pork sandwich in Philly, but we made it into a torta. And so we made, basically, instead of herb roast pork, we made pork carnitas with all of those herby flavors in it. And then like broccoli rabe was on it, but it was tossed in like giardiniera mayo, because you got to have a pickle ingredient in it. And then it was like, we called it, jokingly, having fun with it, we called it middle-aged provolone. So it was like a slice of, like unaged provolone, and then like this like shredded, super picante, like aged provolone on top of it. And it gave like this this creamy texture, but also like that like sharp aged provolone thing that sandwich is known for. And what was tough about it is that picking all of the herbs to create the pesto to marinate the pork in after breaking down a bunch of shoulders, taking all of this time to do it, and then making carnitas out of it, and then pattying it, and then all the other things that going on with picking broccoli rabe and all these other things. We just realized we needed to charge like $22 for the sandwich, and people aren't going to pay that, you know?
Yeah.
And so finding a way to kind of streamline that is something that we're trying to get back into. And then the other one that was on there in the beginning that I think needs to come back, I grew up in upstate New York near Binghamton, where they have these things called Speedies. And Speedies, simply put, is Italian dressing marinated meat that's grilled. And then some people put mushrooms and peppers, and some people put cheese and whatever. But much like chicken saltimbocca that we have on the menu right now, we turn that into chicken salad. So, I mean, basically, like chicken salad, we'll never get into like doing the southern chicken salad with a bunch of like celery and sugar. We won't, and like super shredded like that. It's going to have to be something different. So, I mean, it might be, I don't know, whatever other chicken dishes there are that we can turn into chicken salad. So, so we'll bring back that that Speedies thing where it's like marinated in this Italian dressing that we make. Then we griddle it, cool it, and then it gets tossed in this mayo that has a bunch of like red wine vinegar powder in it. So it's like super bright. And then like shredded lettuce with like pickled peppers and salt, pepper, olive oil just on top. And it's like, I don't know, it's just this vibrant sandwich that just
sounds amazing.
I want to make again.
Yeah.
It's always rough doing this episode right at
before
lunchtime. What the hell? It's noon right now. I'm like, how dare you? Yeah, it's crazy.
Seriously.
Man, that sounds delicious. I do want to, just because the food and beverage side of it, and you did allude to the beer not being set up, are you selling alcohol at ISH right now?
We sell beer and wine. We've got cans, beer in cans, and then a couple of wines by the glass. And then we've got a little half bottle program, which I think is kind of fun, that we were originally open for dinner. That didn't really work out. I didn't write a menu that was conducive to what we should have done for dinner out of the gate. Shame on me. But that was the hope, is that people would kind of gravitate towards this thing that they've known me for is being a part of the wine world. And then, transferring into the food world as well, or predominantly, I guess. And then, so we put together this really neat little half bottle selection that I think is really fun. We price things, we've got one of the best wine lists in this city is about 6 doors from us at Oakwood Pizza Box, and Anthony Guerra put this crazy list together of like all this hard to find stuff. And I mean, we'll never compete with that because we don't have any money, but
I just steal from him and just order all the exact same things he orders.
Right.
Yeah. I always wonder if someone doesn't just do that. They're like, that's a great program. I'm just going to
take it.
Exactly what they order.
People do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, wine is, I mean, it would be foolish to open up a restaurant that didn't have wine involved. And so we try to keep prices right. Learned a little bit from watching Anthony do that with his list, and his prices are fantastic. And just to be able to offer a half bottle to somebody, which is, a little bit more than 2 glasses of wine, and have them buy something that's, maybe it's inexpensive or maybe it's a little bit of a splurge. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I almost feel like at that point, it makes so much more sense than even having a buy the glass program, right? Like just have an affordable half bottle program, and that's it.
Yeah, if more people drank half bottles, then they would be less expensive than they are. They're not half the price of a full bottle of wine because the production is different.
Yeah, you still have glass and cork, which is your most expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah, the production's the same.
Yeah.
It's not half.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
you're still putting it in a bottle and labeling it. Yeah.
And in a case, and so it would be nice if that were the option that people had, but.
And so, like business wise, I mean, I assume you're doing a lot of catering.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
That kitchen is so tiny.
Yeah.
When you walk into this place, like you can kind of see that the kitchen goes a little bit out of sight And what you have to realize is that you see everything.
Right. There's
You
not
can
much
look in
back.
you can look in the window and see back. I mean, we joke that we have to get creative about prep spaces in that place. And yeah, people will be prepping on like metro racks and
Whatever you got to do.
super safe.
Yeah.
Guys.
When you look at Ish kind of from the outside and even maybe just like flash forwarding to like, 10 years down the line, let's say, are you hoping to be like you're talking about like Joe's in South Philly or so, or even just Bay Cities known for their grandmother or their godmother?
Yeah.
It's like certain places are just known for a thing. Is that your kind of goal? Like, I mean, all these places still have a full menu and they have other things they offer, but is it like, are you like, I want to be known for this? And that's like when people come to Raleigh, they know this is the best sandwich in town and it's this thing you get at Ish.
Oh man, I never want the fish melt to leave. I think it's as close to a perfect sandwich that I can make. Maybe we can tweak the bread a little bit, but man, that's my favorite thing on the menu.
What are you calling it? What's the name of the
Just
sandwich?
smoked fish melt.
Have you ever thought like the Larry David?
I love it. I love it.
What's Sable? What's Sable? Matt Weiss wants a sandwich named after him. That's
great.
For Matt Weiss to feel like he has, successfully arrived in this town.
You get a sandwich.
A
named
sandwich
after?
would be
Nice.
named.
Let's work on it.
Instead of
let's
the
do it.
whitefish, the Weissfish.
The Weiss fish. Nice.
Think
Nice.
about it. I mean, he seems like he dines there pretty often. I think like he might already be a small investor of the amount of sandwiches he's had there.
That's great.
But
So I guess to touch on that a little bit, Ish is a brand. And maybe what we make isn't in the delicatessen portion of it. Like the goal has always been that Ish, we trademarked it. It is ours. The goal was always to make a couple of delicatessens, right? Like put them in a couple of strategic spots around the triangle or the state. And then the idea was to put something underneath the word ish that isn't delicatessen, right? Like Ish becomes its own brand. I would love to find a way to make a salumeria. I'd love to find a way to make a taqueria. Like these things that we can keep this parenthetical thing that goes into doing other things.
Yeah.
And not be defined just as a sandwich joint, but defined as this idea that the brand is the thing that is our identity, is that we do a taqueria differently, or I don't know what you can do differently about a salumeria. I just want to make a bunch of meat and sell it in the deli. So
You pickle the accoutrements differently.
for sure.
Yeah.
but whatever that thing is, it was put through the same machine that is your creativity and your attention to flavors.
Absolutely.
And that's the end result.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Well, let's get out of here. But first, before we get out of here, let's at least give some love to two of our fantastic favorite people. I'll speak about Proof Alcohol Ice Cream, as they are a great place to think differently about dessert. They put 7% of alcohol in every pint of ice cream, whether you're having your we're getting into spring right now, so new flavors are abound. But you could get like coconut rum or bourbon caramel, strawberry moonshine, and you can get them in their little red branded freezers at Harris Teeter or Lowe's Shopping Center, or maybe say Triangle Wine Company.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, Triangle Wine Company, another great friend of ours. So for all your wine needs, when you're looking for a half bottle or you're looking for some beer and you can't get down to Ish, but you're going to have a sandwich or something, go grab a bottle of wine or a beer or some vermouth at Triangle Wine Company, who is also our retail partner in Bubbles and Brisket. Don't forget it.
That's right.
June 4th at Smoky Hollow in downtown Raleigh. We haven't put out any official notice of
We're kind
this.
of waiting for April to hit. And then we're going to let everyone know what's going on.
Yeah, we don't want to bombard your feeds or, your inbox, but put it on your calendar. It's June 4th from 2 to 6 in downtown Raleigh. Matt's taking out his phone to put it on his calendar right now and see if he's free.
Done and done.
Awesome. But other than that,
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Matt, thank you for coming in. It's been a good while. We back in the Cure Eat days, we were like sitting there. We had all been kind of friends and collaborators of the Cure Eat project and the app. And I remember going like, dude, as soon as Ish comes out, you're gonna get on the podcast. You're like, yeah, man, yeah, sure, okay. And so it wasn't exactly right when Ish came out, but this is a good time because it gave you some time to get to where you want to be, get this place up and running, and I'm just really excited. You were correct in saying Raleigh needs a deli, and Raleigh needs somebody that has this thoughtfulness behind what putting a deli out here would be. So I'm glad you're the one that's doing it. Thanks for bringing it to our food community.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Fern, for being here.
Hey.
Everybody out there, go to ISH Delicatessen. You will eat and drink extremely merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCFB podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.